Okay, so welcome everyone for one more meeting from SouJava. It's a pleasure to be here with you, and it's my honor to welcome all of you here to the group. SouJava is doing a lot of activities. We're back at in-person activities. We're also doing a lot of things on Discord, right? So I'm going to ask to Max to put a link to Discord if anyone want to join us, our Discord later. SouJava is also doing a lot of things in English, right? So it's great to have one more presentation here in English for all of you guys. And the person that is running a lot of the activities, especially the online activities of SouJava, is my good friend Max, right? So I'll let him introduce our guest today. So with you guys, Max Arruda.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. It's an honor to be a host in this event. It's a new format that I think that will work in the future, and I'm very happy because it's a good opportunity to bring a Java champion, YouTuber, podcaster. Well, he did a lot of things with JavaOne 1.0. Am I right? It's abien. So thanks, abien, to be here and join us today to bring this topic. This very tough, terrific one, because well, complexity is something that we always fighting for. So against. So please go ahead, Adam. Feel free to share your screen and speak more about you, okay?
Perfect.
Who am I to say that?
I hope already my screen is shared. So this, at least it looks for me like this. I should look like, you know, an angel behind the white screen. So if you like, turn on your cameras. And Tiago Lino has to turn on in camera. I think that Tiago is a special person because Tiago is unique. What I know Tiago because I have the AirHacks TV show. It runs for 8 years, and what Tiago does, it rewatches all episodes, and sees because what is AirHacks TV? So I'm answering questions. So I'm gathering the questions the entire month, and then the end of the month I'm answering the questions. And it's interesting to see, you know, what we do right now is like, you know, 100 episodes back, a review, what happened 100 episodes back. And Tiago watches all the episodes and searches for inconsistencies. Maybe, you know, I said, you know, 10 years ago, something different than now. And this is always interesting to see. So, so really great. And big thanks to Max. And because I joined the Chicago Java user group and Max was also there. And right after the meeting, he asked me whether I could speak, you know, for SouJava, and we immediately, you know, started to think about the title. So we had like, you know, 10 different ideas or 5 different ideas, and this is what happened with the. This was like, you know, this is all. This is how the session happened. So it was not like, you know, prepared. I'm actually not a speaker. I'm just a developer, and it's just fun. So how this works for me is very important. That you can interrupt me, ask me questions. You can use the chat. I don't see the chat yet, but the Max will maybe interrupt me and read the question or whatever. Or I will, because in full screen mode.
No, that's okay. I can see the chat. Actually, Tiago
okay,
said,
it disappeared for me. Wait a second. Where is the chat?
He said he's without Ken right now.
Yeah, if it's full screen, it looks differently. So okay, so let's start with the show. So for me, Java is still fun. I get lots of questions why I'm not using other languages, programming languages, but the truth is I get the questions from the beginning. I remember in 1997, someone asked me why I'm not using Python, just Java. Then later, you know, why I'm not using Groovy, why I'm not using Ruby, why I'm not using Kotlin, why I'm not using whatever. And the answer is because there's a lots of interest still in Java. And this is Java, what I know. It is really hard, you know, to learn every other year different programming language. It's just, you know, there is the only problem I have is the time, lack of time, you know, notorious lack of time. If I would learn every other week different programming languages, I would be never productive. This is the truth. Okay, so the most interesting thing for you is maybe the AHEX FM podcast. For instance, last week I published episode with Kelsey Hightower about Kubernetes. What you can also enjoy, this is Max also there, is also an Discord server, but I also joined in the SouJava Discord server. Yeah, that's all. So the podcast, maybe related unit tests considered harmful. We had a nice episode with Alexei about unit testing, for instance. So there's already over 200 episodes, I think, on AHEX FM. So this is what I mentioned is AHEX TV, and what we do is the time machine. What happened 100 episodes ago? And I think I forgot to do this yesterday, this segment, but yesterday was the longest show ever. Anyway, so good that I skipped that. But now the next AHEX TV is going to be the first Monday of the month, 9 p.m. CET, and you can ask me questions. And Tiago is the friend of the show, actually. So there are some online workshops I do a few times a year because a lack of time, and the next one is about AWS and Java on AWS. Okay, this is the Discord server, completely open, so you can join. And yeah, this is I would say low traffic, so you don't have to spend a lot of time there. It's just nice. Okay, so what I can do is I created some slides because I think, so I tried to remember what I actually did in all the projects, and I found, some patterns or patterns, not like design patterns, just patterns what happened in projects. And I would like to share the patterns with you. So I have few slides, and then I can also start coding a little bit and explain you what I think. And it would be great if you could interrupt me or share your opinions. Otherwise, the entire thing would be a little bit boring. So architecture. And I started a few projects in the last 2 years, and I thought, okay, what we did and how it started. And so I think the consistent thing is I don't even think about microservices at the beginning. This is, for me, waste of time at the beginning, to think how many, moving pieces we have. We just start to write a monolith. And in Jakarta and Java, it was a war. Right now with Quark is a jar, but this is not a huge difference. The only a little bit different is the Maven looks a little bit differently. But this basically it. So many developers are shocked that I'm promoting, monolithic design, but this was always the case. So I actually always completely ignored the microservices. But sometimes I sold, my monolith as a microservice, just, to have to have a piece with the architects. But this is the first point. The next thing is related to the first one. Don't distribute. So I don't know why before even microservices, there was a huge excitement about, distributed programming. And I always try to avoid that. And the reason for that is very simple. If you don't distribute, you don't have the problems with two-phase commit transactions, with, with timeouts and partial failure. So if you can, just don't distribute and try to, to communicate as much as possible locally. And at least in Europe, there was people try to use JMS without a reason, events without a reason, and this is the second thing. And the third point in the architecture is also interesting, and it starts to pay off. I tell you why. Use synchronous communications for synchronous use cases. So a story maybe Jakarta, this is an older story, or Java and EJBs. So I got a contract to help my client because all the servers were deadlocked. And the funny story is, the first node was locked, the next one was locked, and everything died basically. And the interesting part is I took a look at the code, and they just used the asynchronous annotation, and they put the asynchronous annotation everywhere. So there was one asynchronous method which called another asynchronous method, and the question is why it stopped, because the result was 0 CPU utilization and everything just died. And the reason was, if you think about this, there was a thread pool with a queue. the queue was bounded, all the tasks were busy, and there was no room for another task. So, to complete a transaction in the queue, another task was needed, but the queue was full. Game over. And I asked them, why you are using the asynchronous? And they told me, yeah, because they need scalability. And what happened then? We removed all asynchronous altogether, and it was fine. So there was actually absolute no issue. They just wanted to be asynchronous for no reason. And after I removed the asynchronous annotations, I was the hero. So wow, how you could, how you knew? It's like I didn't knew. I had no idea why you're doing this. So I deleted this, and it works. So I was lucky. So and the last one is prefer boring tech. So I would say boring is good. Systems for unknown reasons become complex by themselves. So there is no need, to make even more exciting tech. I remember in a trivial projects, developers got idea, to use actors and akka, and then they asked me how to debug the system, and I say, but man, why are you using the actors and the events? They say, yeah, because they read an article, and this is if you would just use Java, just straight method call, everyone knows how to debug methods, right? So, and if you think about this, what's on the horizon is Project Loom. And what will happen with Loom is, with Loom, not with Room, with Loom. And a little bit of Room first, maybe, and then go with Loom. So what you get with Loom is you can start a lot of threads, and you can still, use your own programming style, just synchronous method invocation, what we did in JDK 1.0. Okay, you are very quiet. This is normal for Brazilian. Are you shy? So usually, a JavaOne, who attended the proper JavaOne with some microsystems times? Anyone? Can you just raise your hand, or I don't know what you can do with Zoom, or turn your display or whatever, so I can see no one. Max, you at least.
Julio said that is JB boring stack? Is EGB boring stack? Boring tech? What?
EGB is very boring. I would say Jakarta is boring. So I would say because a few lines of code and there is no magic. I would say boring means it was used a lot and it's boring. And EGB is not only boring, it's also dying, because CDI will replace EGBs at the end of the day. So so this is boring, dying technologies, EGB. Unfortunately, I like EGB because they were simple and lightweight. And the first iteration was a little bit crazy, but then they fixed that. Okay, which means, I also see Bruno Leite, also a friend of the show. I know him very well, so nice guy. And I only see a fraction of the developers, I think, here. Wow, yeah. There's a lot there. There is like a pagination here on Zoom.
Yeah, Josimar also said that it is like a spring. And Vinicius said JPA is boring alive.
Yeah, exactly. So JPA. Wait a second. I have to see where I can find chat. Show. Okay, wait a sec. Close chat, but I don't see the chat.
In the bottom of the window, there should be have a button with icon, like a chatting icon.
Mm-hmm.
Could you see?
Chat?
Yeah.
Now I see. Okay, it was switched to. Oh, I see now the chat. Perfect. So great. Very good. So it's exactly like Spring. JPA is boring alive. Julia says still better than a REST client. REST client, so a micro profile REST client, if you mean that, is boring and simple at the same time. But I have to admit, if you are sharing the modules, then sometimes it's better, to invest a little bit more time. I use HTTP 11, for instance, client with Java SE. SOAP is boring and sadly alive. Yeah, but in most projects, I think I didn't saw SOAP for a long time. And Corba is interesting, Julio or Julio. So Max, what is the right pronunciation? Is Julio or Julio?
I think it's Julio.
Julio. Okay,
Yeah.
so you have to know. You are from Brazil, so
it's hard to say that because it depends on the. Sometimes you find out someone called Julio and Julio, and like my son, my youngest son called it Julian, but Giuliano could be Italian one pronunciation.
Ah, Julian. Okay. So now Julio, we have to say Yari Julio or Julio, but Corba is interesting because from my perspective, Corba could be actually a killer technology. Because if you think about this, gRPC from Google is not that different, right? So the gRPC is actually Corba just repackaged. And the problem with Corba was a little bit too much ceremony, you know. In order to have to look up something, you have to look up the service first, and then you get the lookup service to look up something different. And what I really appreciated back then was the API of RMI, actually, remote method invocation. And because you can just say, you know, naming.lookup, and you are done. And with Corba, there was the narrowing, all the stuff. So I would say Corba is could take off, but we would have to modernize, you know, the API. George says, I listened on a podcast from someone, Genie, Java Intelligent Network Infrastructure. Genie was also a great invention. It was a mix of RMI and Genie. So I actually interact a little bit with the chat, and then we can go to my and Corba implementation was expensive to license, very expensive. Vinicius, but you are from Brazil, and there are lots of open source Corba implementations like JackOrb, right, Vinicius? So you don't have to spend money. So you could use JackOrb. It was completely free. So Eric Lesser asked me, in your example about asynchronous, the team with problems wanted to build a reactive application using some framework. This is what I saw a lot. People just used stuff without knowing why. No kidding. This sounds somehow strange. And in Germany or in Europe, we have a magazine called Java Magazine, but this is not the Oracle one. This is our German one. And there were articles about various frameworks. So funny story. I remember it was, I think, Jakarta Commons, I think chain. I would have to look it up. Jakarta Commons chain. And I was in a project in a task force where there was a server which booted, right? And you know, you boot, it means everything starts in a sequence. And they used Jakarta Commons chain to implement like a system level in Linux. You know, they could say it boot a little bit and a little bit more and completely boot. And they were able to have a boot tree. So you could say, you know, these two modules boot, you know, at the same time. And then after this, the third module boots. But the cool story is I took a look at the repository, and it turns out they never used this functionality. So it always booted, you know, sequentially as just started, you know, there was no such. And I asked them, yeah, why you need the chain, Jakarta Commons chain? And the answer was, yeah, one day you will see, right? So in one day there will be a situation where maybe our server will boot differently. So, and we deleted the module, which actually caused problems. So I would say my observation is, I don't know why developers love to use something new without knowing why. And the problem then becomes that it is not maintainable because no one else can explain why we use such technology without a reason, right? So that's the problem. So no kidding, I try to delete as much as possible from projects. So whatever is suspicious, I try to delete it. Having said this, I would like to switch to another slide. So the chat is great here. So and how to start a project and this beautiful, you know.
I have a question.
Yeah.
We used to listen legacy code. So you are seeing boring code, boring tech.
Yeah.
It's the same thing because I agree with you that boring stuff is more, for example, more a testable technology that you give you the best approach for the projects, for the problems. But we used to see people compare legacy code with useful code. So it's very different one. You could explain to me what's your opinion about legacy code and how those people treats legacy code today.
Yeah. To give you another example, what I mean by boring. For instance, Docker, right? So if I use Docker, as I'm still using Docker, but I use the super images, usually CentOS or Red Hat. And the reason was because most of my clients ran, Red Hat distribution. So in the Docker image, I could just use the regular commands and I know what's inside. There were projects and they use Alpine Linux or they use, DistroLess or UB8 or whatever. And they spend a lot of time with certificates, filling whatever, just to make the entire image smaller. And we measured, then the performance difference. There was no difference. So I used boring Linux, which I knew for years. The others spent time, fiddling with the more exciting stuff, but the added value was zero, I would say. And my CentOS and Red Hat is still in action. And it worked for years. And the other, distributions, they change all the time. So this is one example, and the question is the CentOS or Red Hat legacy? I don't know. So I would say what legacy means to me is no more actively a component, which is no more actively maintained. And boring means to me, it is like Linux is actively maintained, but it works. There's no magic. It just works, right? So this would be boring.
Oh, great, thanks.
So, there's a German car called Volkswagen. It just works. It's boring, right? Legacy would be, the old Volkswagen Beetle. It is boring, but it's no more produced. And exciting would be like, Bugatti or Ferrari. So if I go shopping, I will pick the Volkswagen because there's no added value to pick, Ferrari to go shopping. Maybe I will be 10 seconds faster, but then, fiddle with the not luggage, rather than, the shopping, whatever I call it, what I bought with the shopping cart. And the Volkswagen is boring, but does the job. This is how I see, the entire distinction.
Oh, thanks.
And Red Hat UB8, yes, Red Hat UBs. This is Red Hat UBs. It is true. This is a minimal distribution. As Julio or Julio says, Red Hat is UB smaller than 3. UB8 is from Red Hat. You are right. Early adopters sometimes not a boring tech. Is it a problem? No. I give you an example from my current project. For instance, we started 1 year ago with AWS Lambda in a project, which is monolith, and Lambda only supports Java 11. But I say we won't start right now with Java 11 if Java 17 is LTS. So what we did is we implemented or used Java 17 layer. So we have Java 17 or Lambda for 1 year, and we wait until Java 17 gets released, to kill the layer. So I would say what we did is a little bit dangerous, but yeah, I mean, but we are early adopter, right? So because there are not a lot of projects which have time, to do this, and we did it. And yeah, this is so. And the question is, now, what's the name? Deusemar Junior? Is this Deusemar? Deusemar? Max.
For English is a Dussemar.
Dussemar. Okay, Dussemar. Dussemar. And for Brazilians? For Brazilians, how is pronounced Dussemar?
Deusemar.
Deusemar.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Brazilian, so this we have to do it in Brazilian way. So cool. So early adopters, the question is, so first, what I had to say, the focus should be on commercial software, what I'm talking about. In leisure, my behavior is different. So I do whatever is fun. if I'm working for my clients, I try to build, simple software. So now early adopters, it means if my clients would like to be early adopters, I will ask them why, right? If you go to a shop and buy something, would you like to be early adopter or not, right? So this is the question, why you are early adopter? So there should be some, outcome. Let's say early adopter could mean we build, for instance, right now, a highly scalable software, and we would like to have Loom right now. And if we use Loom right now, which is preview, we are early adopters, but the hope is one day it becomes standard and we can save a lots of time, right? I remember prior Java 8 with lambdas and streams, there was an external software provider wanted to sell us a framework with some calculations, computation, and to me, with lots of inner classes, it was really ugly. And we thought, okay, Java 8 is not available yet, but I would start as early adopter of Java 8 now with the hope that the lambdas that we are implement become a standard and we don't have to use the proprietary software. So I would say the early adopters was justified in that case, but being early adopter without a reason is just trouble, and less vacations to you. Agreed?
Yeah.
Yeah, and what do you say, Julio? You say great base for stable container images. You are right, but it's not my choice often. Different companies have different super images. So some companies is SUSE based, is less common, I think, in Brazil, but in Germany is actually German company SUSE. Then Red Hat, Linux. Then some companies have their own base image. So I cannot just come in and say this is my image, just take it. So this is and now with all the security problems, the company is a little bit more sensitive. Okay, cool. So first point, choose your standard, and this doesn't have to be for entire project. It was usually, right now it is no more. I'll give you a concrete example from my current project. So for instance, if we had actually a discussion yesterday, if we are on micro profile, for instance, right? Then on Jakarta E, then I will pick, JSON P, JSON B, whatever inside JPA. I don't like to, wouldn't even look at, Jackson or plain Hibernate. It's just my standard. So by picking micro profile or Jakarta E, we already, set the standard. So it means for me, micro profile and Jakarta E is no more let's say, a dependency to me. This is my platform. I don't care about this, but everything else has to be justified. So, and this is different because in my current project, we have one Lambda, which is monolithic and is based on micro profile. And the other Lambdas are actually, don't use micro profile, it's just Java SE. So there's even less dependencies in the first one. So we have like two standards, Java SE plain and micro profile, for instance. And back then we use lots of Glassfish and JBoss, Whitefly, Open Liberty. And with that it was the same. So we say, okay, this Jakarta EE is the standard. Everything else is, but this has to happen first. So we agree, okay, what do we actually need? And historically, how it happened in Java. So Java SE was first, then the J2E APIs started to appear, and then we got then we got J2E with multiple implementations. This is to my knowledge, even Spring often uses parts of Java E. Okay, the next thing, what we always do, this is a little bit harder, but sometimes even in KISS projects, you have to, I prefer to do the hardest things first. And CI/CD. So everything has to be automated from the beginning. So this, I would say, this is also KISS for me, because without that, there is huge discussion. And so no works on my machine, for instance, right? So forget it. So it has to work wherever you have it. And yeah, there was Vinicius from AWS. So this is why I prefer serverless. For instance, if I have to go to the cloud, I prefer serverless services with the very simple reason. Serverless means usually scale to 0, which also means every developer can have their own account with production-like environment, and it will cost you nothing, because if you just for development, you are usually below the free tier. But if you are working in non-serverless environments, you will have to pay per environment, which usually means developers get, a shared environment, test environment, and this is not appealing. This is what we had in Java for 25 years, so there's no improvement. So Vinicius says serverless first always. Friends don't let friends to use EC2 instances. Vinicius, you are from AWS, but I have a bit contradict you, or contradict. I'm a little bit. This is not general. The problem is, Vinicius, this is like, serverless and surfless, right? So this is similar, but serverless, the problem with serverless, this is 20%, 20 to 30% more expensive than EC2. But having said that, in most enterprise projects, it is still orders of magnitude cheaper than EC2, because it is nearly impossible, I would say, to fully utilize an EC2 instance in enterprise. Usually you always have to over provision with EC2 or Kubernetes or Docker. This is my observation. And the serverless, it is always fully utilized because it automatically scales up and down. So this is the huge advantage. So serverless is a little bit more expensive, or not a little bit, 20, 30% is not a little bit, it is more expensive, but for enterprise projects is the first choice, yes. But I didn't want it to speak a little bit and not speak a lot, about cloud today, but in the cloud is the KISS and so forth is, I would say, is different, because in clouds costs come first, not the the simplicity. I would say in the cloud, just a little bit different model. We pick whatever is cheap and we can afford, even if it's more complex. And today I'm assuming plain Java. Okay. George says, I really love Elastic Beanstalk. Yeah, you are one of the rare developers who really love it. So it's okay. But I would say ECS Fargate is really nice. If you like Elastic Beanstalk, take a look at Fargate, or the newer one. It's called App Runner, I think. Take a look at App Runner, for instance, or Lightsail. Okay, but Julio says, I confess that I want to use manifold systems in a project just to make it less boring. Yeah. I mean, you can try it. I mean, you could even, create some Easter eggs to have more excitement in a project. It's also cool. So EKS is very expensive. Bruno Leiter, yes. AKS is very expensive and a bit crazy, Bruno, I have to say. What AKS is, Elastic Kubernetes Service, because if you run it on AWS, you have two stages. One is to set up the environment, and the second one is set up the AKS, and you get even CDK and CDK for AKS. So you will spend a lot of time with infrastructure, and the question is why? This is the actually why, right? Okay, now write simplistic Java code, and now it becomes a little bit contradictory. This is really what he did, and what I do at the beginning of the projects, I don't even bother, to have getters, setters, private methods, or whatever. I just write a few classes with public fields. With Java 17, I will use Java records. The problem with Java records is, maybe you get the same problem as I always start with a Java record, and then I find, a few fields which are mutable, and then have to convert the record to a class. This happens sadly often to me. But so at the beginning, I don't spend any time thinking, about patterns, interfaces, factories, and whatever. I just write Java code even worse than a beginner. So session with public fields. No kidding. And I get warnings. I don't care. And maybe after a few weeks, we clean this up, but more likely this class is going to be deleted, because it's also my observation is mission impossible to write sensible code from the beginning, because we are learning the domain, the target domain. This is what happens in our project. So I never did the same project twice. So we always have to learn. So it means there's a lot of throwaway code at the beginning. So in my eyes, it is not worth, you know, to start with clean code from the beginning, but you have to be disciplined. And in one point of time, you have to clean it up. So this is actually the idea. So the chat is quiet, which surprises me because this is very heretical in Germany. So actually, funny story, in Germany, there was a project. It was still Eclipse RCP. I don't know whether you remember Eclipse Rich Client platform. And I was a consultant, and someone asked me, "Hey, can you help me with patterns? I would like to know, you know, adapter, decorator, pattern factory, and so forth." And I wrote code, more and more code. And at the end, this was my mistake. I asked, "What do you actually do? Why we are writing so much code?" And he said, "Okay, actually, I only would like to have, you know, a button with an action listener. But I would like to be flexible." So I read, you know, the Gang of Four Patterns book, and I would like to have, you know, complete decoupling. So the button doesn't know what is invoked. So we've wrote maybe 10 classes with beautiful Gang of Four patterns without a reason. If I noticed that, I'll say, this was like, you know, around 2000, I say, I will never give an advice, you know, without knowing the context. Because he asked me, tell me what factory does. Okay, so I showed him the factory. Then, you know, we had decorator, we had everything there, but I never asked what you would like to build. This was my mistake, and this is one of the reasons, right? So I would say you really have to know, you know, the context. Okay, ignore patterns, ignore best practices. So in another project, and developer sent me slide decks from a university why I was wrong, because my code was not modular. Back then, OSGI was big, and they wanted to have modules which didn't knew each other, and, you know, separated class loaders and separate versions. And the question to you is, let's say, when do you know whether modules are appropriate or not? So if you have a Maven project and you open a Maven project, and is there a way to find out whether, you know, the modularization is, you know, appropriate or not? This is the interesting question. And what I do, I can tell you my secret in code reviews. I take a look at the versions. So if you have a multi-module, multi-version projects, and all projects, all modules ship with the same version, means everything is released at once. And now the question is, why you spend time, you know, in 50 projects? If there's never the case, then one project is going to be updated or isolated. Everything is now considered as a monolith. And so I would say ignore patterns and best practices. I'll take a look. Okay. Ignore ports and adapters too. Eric asked me, ignore ports and adapters too. I would say in my projects, JAX-RS could be considered as, if you mean, you know, hexagonal architecture, for instance, you know, ports and adapters. This comes from this. I completely ignore it, because if you think about this, JAX-RS WebSockets, you can just use it, and the ports and adapters are already there, but there's no reason to decouple from JAX-RS, for instance. Okay, so, and to be more precise, what I mean by that is the following. So if I just switch to my terminal, and I could start with my Quarkus create app, and now call it sessions. So it creates an app sessions, and I open with Visual Studio Code. So so what I see here, it will be one greetings resource. That's all. So, and how I would start such a project. So first, session is a bad name. There would be a business name, like how is sessions in Brazilian and Portuguese? Sessions? Session.
É sessão, né? Mas
Session.
no worries, no worries. Session's a good one for us.
Yeah, but what is the name in Portuguese to session? Does it sound different? Huh?
Sessão.
Session. And yeah, the sessions would be session, like, you know, like a different name because the sessions is just, this already the component name, so it's a pity. But I go to source main Java, and then what I will do, I will create the first component, and this would be SouJava. And now sessions, this is what I don't like, because I would like to design sessions, boundary, and boundary. And what happens now is I have here the BR boundary, and add sessions resource.java. And the sessions resource only ships with path, and this is sessions. So, and now the question is, okay, I would like to test that. So what I need is I need a public method, and I have to return something. So the question is what I would like to return, and I would like to return a session. So I would create a Java class called session Java. This is prior to record. And what I mentioned is I would really start with that title. And this is a little bit ugly. So not ugly, this is ugly, but this is inconvenient. So what we actually do as well, I would even create a constructor to create it more easily, just for convenience. And this would be in the package entity. So what I like, the entity boundary control standard. And so we have session, resource, and session, and this could return the session, just one, and later an array. And and I would say this is get, and maybe produces or do it media type application JSON. And then here I can say return new session and kiss is kiss. Okay, that's all. And the next step, so let's see whether it's working. And the next step would be to write a system test, because how to write unit tests is impossible. Whatever I will write a unit test for it, it is a waste of time. So I would start with system tests, but we will see in a second. So Maven clean compile. Clean is not needed. So I always get, I make the Apache committers or Maven committers angry with my cleaning. So no cleaning here, you see, Quarkus and dev. And it should start. And then, so it looks good. So I could go here and say curl localhost 8080/sessions. And I get the session back. The problem is I forgot an extension, the Quarkus extension, and a dependency. And the dependency is, so I would just copy this. I need JSONB. So the dependency is JSONB, boring JSONB. So do it again. And it doesn't look good. So just restart this. And I have to say here always. And you see, now it's working. So there was a REST issue with JSONB, and now I get JSON back. So this would be the first iteration. And if you have, we could start to develop the entire API with very simple code. And then one point of time, we could, make a Java record out of that. So we could say, okay, because, you may start with Java 11 and then migrate to Java 17. But no kidding, we do some. So this for me is better than, something like this. So I would say the getters or setters, I don't get it. So what is the difference between this and a public field? No difference. Okay. Now, Java and Quarkus and Lambda and Aurora ship. Yes. I don't like. I would like to skip the AWS deployment. So if you like, Max, we can later do an AWS session. Just today, I would skip the clouds completely. And compile is not needed. Yeah, compile is not needed. You are right. And actually, nothing is needed because Julio, you can even do this Quarkus dev, right? So this is the simplest possible way to start the thing. I wanted to be more explicit, but this is the more magic. So now it's the same. Reactive to Java Quarkus plus LAM. What is LAM? This is a typo, I guess. Bruno. But Bruno, thank you. So he attends my workshops. A really nice guy and smart guy as well. So cool. Any questions? So Maximilian, I would say, the situation will escalate because I use public fields, but you are already a pragmatic group of, Java developers, so no problem at all. Okay.
There is a question down here, but I think that we could book another session to talk about cloud stuff. But Eric is asking, if monolith first, wouldn't it be a contract?
Okay.
Start with Lambda.
Actually, in my current project, our Lambda comprises 400 classes. So we have Lambdas, huge Lambdas, and it's not a problem at all because Quarkus optimizes the with reflection or with the build extensions, the bytecode, there is no reflection, no class loaders. And so we building monolithic Lambdas, right? This is no contradiction. And I don't know how to call it. We don't call it at all. We just misuse Lambda as a runtime, and it works good. And maybe just Azure Functions, by the way, is the same. And how this works behind the scenes is you have an API gateway in the front or application load balancer, and the API gateway or application load balancer are receiving, the HTTP requests. They are converting the requests in HTTP events, and the events are consumed by Quarkus by specific extensions, Quarkus extension, and Quarkus invokes JAX-RS. So for us, we don't even know that we are running a Lambda. So Eric, it is like, for us, is Lambda like Docker, no difference. Startup time, 2 seconds. You can have a hot Lambda, so then you will pay 15 euros a month, roughly, and then it's hot. Okay, cool. No indirections means okay, we get indirection, a possible indirection with dependency injection, but what I meant is no interfaces, no factories. In my current project, I think we have 2 interfaces for persistence because we have multiple implementation of a persistence, but for 400 classes, 1 interface. What was a few years ago, it was like everyone wanted to have interfaces, and this in Germany. So like the architects were crazy about interfaces. And what I never understood is if you have an interface and you implement the interface and you call the implementation impl, I would say this is something wrong, right? Because if you call the class impl, the question is, what do you do with the second class? You cannot call it impl2, right? So if you have an implementation, you have to correctly name it. So let's say we have an order service, then the implementation I would expect to be called, Amazon order service or Shopify order service, but not order service impl. It doesn't mean anything. So it's like, this is what I meant. And don't write clever code. So I would say it is more challenging to write simple code than clever code. And clever code means, try to have as dense code as possible, or sometimes, as I remember, as reflection, for instance, was new, right? So everyone wanted to have everything in reflection just for fun. And also cool. This is also a cool story. I was in a project, and everyone complained that our project has really bad, statistics because of coupling. We have cycles, and I say, okay, but I mean, sometimes we need cycles or what we can do, right? And there were some reference projects with great numbers. And I said, it is impossible. I mean, the others, they also have to call, you know, from time to time, the other class. And I took a look at the code, and what they did, they knew how the tool measures, you know, and if they had to call another module, they use reflection. So, you know, the analysis tool couldn't detect the cycle. So, which was actually a cool hack. So, okay, if this is the pattern, I can write your library. So we have completely decoupled. So there will be absolute no dependencies at all. But the problem is, you know, a minor change in the method signature will break the entire system, for instance. So I would say, don't write clever code, just write simple, stupid code. And why? Because more than 50% of your code won't survive first iterations. So this is the observation. Okay, next one. Build. I get asked, you know, Maven or Gradle. In my projects, I prefer Maven. Why? Because my builds are very simple. So there is no magic, right? It's different if you have to, you know, implement something for Android, for instance. There are lots of variations. So of course, then use Gradle. But today, you know, a little bit more focus on backend. I always start with Maven, and Maven is that simple. And even, you know, a simple Maven is faster than simple Gradle. This was my observation, interestingly. And I don't need, you know, programming in Maven. So what we also don't use, no POM inheritance, no modules, because if you don't have dependencies, there is nothing to inherit. And Maven modules are uncommon. And having said that, before I would introduce a Maven module to share simple code between other modules, I have nothing against copy and paste in the first iterations. So microservices are all about copy and paste. You have to recognize that. You cannot have decoupled microservices with shared jars. It doesn't work. And so if you have something like a session and you would like to use my session, before we create a shared jar, you just, you know, copy the code, and this is how it works. No problem at all. So copy and paste is a good thing, you know, and with Stack Overflow is even a best practice. We're using Maven JPackage release. Oh, perfect. Reduce, eliminate Maven plugins. So at the Jakarta time, we had absolutely no plugins. With Quarkus, you need to know the Quarkus plugin. Another observation is Maven is not CI/CD. So what I noticed, it now is less, but a few years ago in Europe, there were projects where they used, you know, there were even developer lists in Maven, and Maven generated a website. I forgot, there was a plugin who generated a website, project website, summary, crazy stuff. In one project, there was a plugin with crazy URIs, and I took a look and I say, what are the URIs? And there were pictures from developers. So there was even no Instagram was built into Maven. So I would say Maven is not CI/CD. So what it means is, if we need stages, we use it as in the pipeline. So we have no lifecycle chaining. So we call sometimes even, you know, directly plugins in the pipeline, and it works well. So why this need for speed? For instance, in the pipeline, how does look like in CI/CD is we compile it first, then we run unit tests. This is the next stage. Then we create the sometimes integration tests. Then we create the package, the archive or Docker image, the deployment unit, and then we try, you know, to start it in an environment, and then we run the system tests. So what it means is we need a modular build in the CI/CD pipeline to see the stages. If Maven would do everything, there will be one huge blob build. You will wait 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and at the end you get to know an answer. It works or it doesn't work. What I prefer is to have an individual stages where you say, okay, a unit tests were successful, but integration tests broke, you know, like a visual feedback. And this only works if the Maven, if you know, execute, I don't know, in a system test, that everything else is re-executed. So I try to avoid lifecycle, how to call it, lifecycle hooks. exactly. Very good. So let's see about what are the questions. Start a Java project with Jakarta and microprofile dependencies is simple and I can focus on business problem. Very good, Tiago. With Quartz Spring, I have to know which dependency I will have to use. This is very true. And Quartz, I would say legacy. I'm really surprised. Quartz is like a scheduler. In the cloud, it is not usable because where to run Quartz, you will use the Event Bridge or on AWS or CloudWatch Events was the older name. And on Java E, we just had a timer without knowing what's behind the scenes. And some application servers even used Quartz. Exactly. So add, remove. Mm-hmm.
He said quarks, but it means quarkus, actually.
Okay. And add, remove Quarkus. This is what Tiago Lino said. Add, remove Quarkus. So this add and remove is contradictory, and Quarkus is asterisk. So Tiago, you have to clarify. Yeah,
no,
this is all.
Let me try to help you. Actually, what he means is that with Quarkus and Spring, not Quarkus, Quartz and Spring. You understand? You get
Yeah.
it? So that's the reason why he typed Quarkus with asterisk, because we used to say that when we did something on the chat. So something like that.
Okay, got it. Julio says job runner, some apps here. Job runner is okay. But this is like, the commitment. If you say, yeah, for instance, when you need Quartz or job runner, there are some projects where you have to run lots of jobs. Then it's obvious. Then you can say, okay, then, I mean, Quarkus is not the solution. We need something different. Or we schedule the jobs by ourselves. So we build our own system, or we use Quartz, job runner, whatever. On, for instance, AWS, you could use the enterprise scheduler for Event Bridge. So it's already done. It would just call you, right? Lambdas or whatever. So it really depends what is the main goal in your projects. If you have lots of batch jobs, you need something, and job runner might be the solution. But I wouldn't use, for instance, this is a very interesting topic, because what I saw in lots of projects a few years ago, they use Quartz just to have a few periodic jobs, just cleaning the cache or whatever. For that, you don't need Quartz or anything else. You could just even execute a service, for instance. Well, my first choice would be, I think it's called scheduled executor service. It ships with Java, or even timer task. Java util timer task is forever in Java. Java util timer task to schedule jobs, for instance, right? Okay, and need for speed. What I mean by that is we continuously monitor performance. The faster the build, the more productive you are. So if you can, speed up the deployment and build. And recently, for instance, Maven ships with Maven Cache, which can speed up your build. So this is where you should invest time. So boring but fast. This is actually the idea, right? Okay, testing. So first, start with system tests and completely ignore unit tests. This, I get a lot of trouble with it. So what is system test? So in my project here with Quarkus, Max, how many attendees do we have today? Do you see this?
31.
It's okay, right?
Yeah, I think so.
30 nice guys. Very good. Nice people. Guys and gals, of course. Quarkus, what was it? I wanted to create app. And what I'm doing, I would create another project. It's called Sessions ST. And this Session ST, Sessions ST, is only used for testing purposes. This is the strange part. So I would reuse Quarkus here. So, and what I would use here, for instance, I would go here and use, not that. I think was Quarkus client. No, not Quarkus. I think REST easy. No, micro, small right. REST client was what I'm searching is REST. Exactly, REST client. I was right. Because there is one dependency, one extension, which is not small right, and this was the REST easy. So I thought it was this one, but this is right. So this is microprofile REST client, and what we do then? So what I will do it by hand, and usually I don't do this often. What happens is I have a template or a POM XML with all the microprofile dependencies, and I just use them all over and over because they don't change. It's always the same microprofile API, right? So okay. So rest assured, I don't need rest assured. I never used that actually. I'll show you in a second why. And what we need is in source test Java. I would use now the same and oh, wait a sec.
Well, Vinicius sent on the chat and the comments to a comment in the chat in order to add the extensions directory by using.
Yeah, I show you this how to do this. There is a Quarkus. He means I can add with the Quarkus extension, right? This is what he meant.
Yeah, actually, it's a command that you could add easily the dependencies.
Yeah, but the cool story is sometimes you are faster just by command. Command dot, because you get the auto completion here. So you can use the Quarkus integration with extension, or you can just type here. So it depends. If this is the question, this is yeah, but thank you. So did I perform that? I hope so. Test, no, not yet, right? Yeah, I did. This is here. And now what we can do, we have two projects right now. So we have one with session resource. So what I do here, I would just completely copy this, right? Not this, rather than completely copy actually the class. Session resource, copy the class, and put the class here. So, and I rename it. This is sessions resource client. And this is going to be the interface. And interface is bodiless. So, and what I did, I created my own client. What I'm wondering is why I should go yeah. Source test Java looks good. Session resource. What's wrong? Source main Java. Wait a sec. I have here a problem. So we have here dependency. You see the problem? What's wrong with the dependency? It looks actually good, right? Yeah, all quiet. You are supposed to help me right now. Dependency. Okay. And now we add.
Get start from the artifact name instead of to provide the group ID. I think it will help you.
Yeah, but I think it was right, so I couldn't spot the error.
Or maybe just execute the command Quarkus extension add on the point to help you.
Dependency. This is good. Dependencies, Quarkus, Smorai, REST client.
Is it correct? io.quarkus as a group ID? Maybe it could be another one. It's like
this is what
yeah.
he meant, right? REST easy client, and we have REST Smorai. Lots of clients.
With REST client only, just try to do this. Yes, I think it is.
Anyway, actually I did it today, but yeah, we have to fix it, otherwise it's boring. No, I actually do this a lot.
Oh, Julio sends the dependence node on chat.
Yeah, I lost the chat. Wait a sec. View, hide video show. Wait a second. My chat is gone. This is a pity. Show all windows. Still no chat. I only see you. Okay, no problem. This is I'm pretty sure it's Smorai, right? Small Quarkus Smorai, and this was actually right. This was the REST client. OP REST client. And exactly, this is the REST client. And I will just try to remove that first.
Are you sure that the group ID is the same?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, now it looks good because I get compiler errors. And dependency IO Quarkus.
It's missing the version property.
Okay.
Because it should be imported automatically by the dependency management system.
In your eyes in the bone.
Yeah.
I have it here. This is another, this is what, this is my projects template for Quarkus. And I will just take a look. ST. So. Interesting. It's Quarkus REST client. It was renamed. I was pretty sure this is Smorai, and this was dependency, and this is extension. So my fault. this should be this without the numbers. So wrong extension. Which is good. So the error was the extension Quarkus knows about, and it inherits the version from here. What I added was not an extension, it was a regular dependency, and it missed the version. And I thought, you know, there was some special character this was my suspicion. But let's see. So now it builds, and we have now here the session resource, and there is no session. So what you will have to do is for the tasks, you will have to use here the response, for instance, response, and so, and then use this and inject this interface. This is also wrong. Wait a sec. Let me fix this. Rename file to that, and the response is this one. And then what we can do, we can write now a test session resource it.java, and this is just regular test. And now it comes with Quarkus. I can say this is a Quarkus test, and now inject the REST client, and this is the session resource client, and write a test. Fetch, why not? And this would be a test. So this will still break, because what I forgot is to say here register REST client, and say the base URI is HTTP localhost 8080 / and there will be sessions. So with that, what I have here, I have my test, and I can just use here the method, what was it, session, and what I get back is a response, and it is auto closable. Was questioned yesterday, var response, and then I could of course use JSONB or JSONP, and but I will have to add an additional dependency. So now, and of course, what I can do is I can say, you know, response get status, I think, exactly, and and just test it. But the interesting part is, so this is what we start with, write system tests. Now the question is why I deleted rest assured, and I'm using, you know, I'm fiddling here with the micro profile. And the answer is because this is reusable. So I created this more or less with copy and paste, and I could actually give you the interface and you can use it in a project. So you get a tested microservice client, so it's reusable. And rest assured is not reusable. It can be only used for testing. Okay, and then just, you know, do the status here. And with a little bit of luck, it should actually work. So always continue. And you see 200, so it worked. So sorry for the, I just used no wrong dependency, but yeah, now it was, so we have two projects, one system test project and the regular projects. The system test projects calls the first one. So this is the idea. Okay. Questions regarding this? And here's the chat. Okay. Still don't see this. Now I see this.
Can you see the chat again?
Yeah, I can see the chat again. Okay. It was just, I don't know, it was on, I had to push several times and now it appeared that the window was hidden and, or yeah. So, Julio says there is an Quarkus multi-module example, and dependency management is okay. So the error was what Julius gave me is the Quarkus REST client, which is an extension, and what I used was a dependency, and Maven complained that the version was missing, and my suspicion was that in the dependency I just have a typo. This was what I searched for. Okay, so we covered now a little bit testing. So what means is ignore unit tests. So this is how we start with system tests. So everything is tested from outside, and we start with unit tests after a few iterations, sometimes even after weeks. If we have a true business logic at the beginning, there's nothing to test. I mean, I have my session with as data carrier. Maybe if you go to the database, it's still nothing to test. So, and I get lots of trouble with it. Why? Because clients expecting code coverage, and the code coverage is measured with unit tests. And the problem, of course, is if I don't have unit tests, it's zero code coverage. And the system tests coverage, you could do this, but most companies are not doing this because it's harder. You will have to install a kind of an agent in Quarkus or application servers, and then you get the system test coverage. But it's in most companies is not appreciated or it's not done, with the outcome that most of the projects are 80% unit tested, but no one knows whether it's actually working. So because it could happen that everything is green and the server don't even start, right? Okay, stress tests, very important. So what we do then, we are using the system tests and write stress tests to see what happens, right? For instance, how many lambdas are active if you're talking about lambdas, or is our Docker container big enough? And what we try to do is to sabotage a little bit the environment. What I did, at the application server time, I misconfigured the connection pools, that we only have one connection with 30 clients, and I was curious how the exceptions look like, what the behavior is. So avoid mocks and local test environments. So mocking, so there are lots of developers who love mocks, and everything is mock out. But to be honest, in most enterprise projects, it's not like we write a crazy complex logic. And if you mock out the database and everything else, so then you are testing the mocks. So what I already see is, no kidding, is, for instance, what I saw or what I see frequently in projects, that what developers would do, they would mock out mock out the response, and then say, okay, I expect that the response return 200, and in order to, and then they will test the mock, right? Because they say, when someone calls from response get status, return 200. So at the end of the day, you wrote a unit test and you didn't test anything. So there's lots of code which is completely pointless. I saw, or I see still, projects where they are testing enums, which is crazy, right? Does enum work? I mean, why not? I mean, what can go wrong? So they go, to enum and call names and see whether all names are in the enum. Or they call setter and see whether, if they call setter, the getter also is working. I never saw getter and setter failing in the history of Java, but it's still tested a lot. So for me, it does make any sense. And I don't do this. And the problem is, of course, my statistics or my metrics not always look good. So I would say the how is the tool called? The SonarQube is evil in some projects. So it should help us, and we should not be slave, of Sonar.
Okay, Adam, Deosemar did a question as well. The question is how to convince a company to do this simple thing that may seem like a lack of quality.
Who asked the question? I don't see this.
Deosemar.
Okay, but in chat?
Yes.
Huh. The last question in my case is dependency management is okay.
Oh.
I sent direct to.
Oh, He sent direct to me. Sorry.
Ah, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, now I see this. How to convince
Sorry.
a company to do the simple thing that may seem like a lack of quality. It depends, on the culture in your company. And for me, quality means, is good names. We spend a lot of time, to find the proper name for classes, methods, and packages. So this is the quality. And if the code is simple, so if you invite third-party developer and looks like a code and say, okay, I completely get what you did, then you won, right? You win. But the lack of quality, you're right. But it shifts, right? I remember 10 years ago, quality is all public methods has to come with Javadoc, with the consequence that all getters and setters were commented, which is pointless. So I would say, if your company has to deliver software fast, they usually don't care. So what means quality? Quality means you can maintain your software well. So to my opinion, the company have trust you to write good software. If company will trust you to write good software, you will try to write good software, right? And whatever you're doing is okay if the software is maintainable. So it's like trust relationship, they cannot, yeah. But I know what you mean. Forgot the name, Dussemar Junior. Yeah, this was what people blame me, you like, monolithic programming and say, I don't care how you call it. It has to work, right? And in one company, I don't know what they remember, model-driven architecture back then. They wanted to generate everything and didn't believe in this. It was okay. I mean, we can spend time, modeling and then generating everything. I don't believe that it will work. And they say, okay, I'm heretical because, yeah. By the way, it is this almost 1 day, right? So it's 1.5 hours. We already, it's the next day here on my side.
Oh,
Test
really?
response. Yeah. Test response time can slow down with system tests. Yes, absolutely, Eric. System tests are slower. And this is very important that we have a multi-stage pipeline, because we get the first feedback, does project compile? The next feedback are unit tests, okay? The next feedback, integration test, then build. And in the very end, system tests are running. So I know the more we test, the slower it gets, but you get immediate feedback. And yeah, and the pipeline can run 20 times a day, no one cares. You don't have to wait. So you have to then check after 5 minutes and see whether it is working. Okay. Avoid mocks, avoid local environments, measure performance, and then optimize. Never optimize without measuring. Ignore unit test coverage and focus on system test coverage. This is what we actually said right now, right? So the first iteration, if you start, learn about the domain. This is our job. And I continuously rename everything. I know I shift classes back and forth. This is why it is pointless to create, nice sophisticated code. Copy and paste is still your friend, but what we do, we try to remember what we copied. And in my eyes, you can copy twice, but if you copy third time, maybe there is time to think whether we should reuse or repackage this. So you should not start, with jar and abstract classes, whatever. Copy is okay, but not the entire time, right? So this in one point of time you should refactor. And by the way, it's not on the slide. I created a slide before the show as a brain dump. So okay, not to forget things. And what I try to forgot to tell you, you should continuously refactor from the beginning. Very important. What happens in most projects, they go fast at the beginning, they never refactor, and then then they don't understand the code anymore. Then they have to refactor, and management doesn't understand why they move slower after a few iterations. So I would say the trick is to be consistently slower. So at the beginning, you refactor a little bit more, so you're slower, and then later you have more time to refactor, because the the management already knows your velocity. So I would say, don't be too fast at the beginning. This is actually the idea here. So improve, rethink, and refactor, and you will be amazed how much you can shift, repackage at the beginning. Okay. And in subsequent iterations, I would say improve naming, remove redundancies, reuse tests. So we cannot cover this today, but what happens is in all projects, actually, this is also interesting, actually an interesting talk, a title for the talk. If you take a look at the interface, right, what happens then, we copy the interface to source main Java. So it will still work, it will be here. And, oh, this was not the interface. The interface has to be here. So, and it's just wrong package. So now it's nicer. So now we have the interface here and the test here. Why? Because if we build the projects, it will create a jar with the interface. So now we have a microservice client out of the box. But now if you think about this, if we would build, a real system, we will have to log in first. And so what happens is you have to log in, do something, log out, right? Log in, log out. And what you could do now, you can create additional classes here, which reuse common flow. You can say, I don't like to log in each time. So you can create a class like a business delegate, inject the class to your tests, and you move faster. So what happens is we spend a little bit of time of reuse system tests to move faster. Otherwise, you will find a lot of repetition, log in, log out all the time, right? Or, for instance, very common in CRUD, right? In order to test delete, you have to create it first. So you have then create tests, and then you copy the code with create, so you can reuse it by copying the code from source test Java to source main Java. Okay, reuse tests, keep tests green, remove code. So delete as much as code as you can and simplify whatever you can. So the internal structure, what I really like is the boundary control entity. This is an old pattern from Ivor Jacobson. This is almost older than Java. And you saw already these icons, is boundary control entity. Why I like it? Because it's old, is available everywhere, the icons. And this is how I structure all my systems. And because it's that old, I have to not discuss, why I'm using this, because it's described in, lots of books. And this is the next trick. Find a standard, then you don't have to justify why you're using this usually, because you can always point to a book or whatever, or a paper, and you don't have, to spend time in meetings to discuss naming conventions or whatever. So if you can standard, use it. And the idea is that we build Java packages, the components. So I started with it. This was the sessions. And I already created boundary and entity. What was missing was control. If you only have boundary and entity, means this is that simple system, only CRUD. There's nothing, strange to expect. It's like, the boundary just uses the entity, and control would be a little bit more logic, like, text calculation or something more sophisticated. So we had no time, for code reviews. I actually wanted to walk through my old code, but it's going even, I don't know how much time we have, but we are probably over time already. So this is my last slide. If you like, join the courses. Or Bruno was joined already. Always fun with him, and there are people from all over the world. So it's interesting, nice group of people. And thank you to Max for inviting me. And this, guerrilla presentation, because, it was unplanned. It was like, a chat with Max in Discord. And if you like, join Discord so we can continue our conversations. SouJava Discord, and if you like, my Discord as well, doesn't matter. You can always ping. I think Discord is great because you can always reach, the guests regardless in which server they are. It doesn't really matter. Okay. Any questions? So, Max, I'm really surprised that I didn't got, more hit, because it was really controversial what I said, and I'm constant trouble in project with my approach. But right now in the smaller companies, we are pretty successful and really enjoy, because we write really that simple code. And this is more challenging than you may think, because I would say more easy is, to copy over all patterns, and then you already have you can justify. Maybe this is a true story. I worked for a bank in Germany. They hired me, to build to create a new architecture for them, and I got some developers. And after 2 weeks, the manager came to me and say, "Look, everything works, but since you are there, we didn't wrote any code. It's more a little. So your predecessors, the consultants, they create code generators, lots of code action, and since you are there, you're just renaming the stuff and everything works. But I mean, we cannot justify you because there's almost no code." So it is really no kidding. If you are working for larger institution, and with our approach, this is what also someone wanted to to say, that it is lack of quality, because they say, okay, how it's possible, to write a little code and it still works. And on that note, my very first project in Java was a CMS system, and it was supposed to be distributed on CD. This was a cool story, actually. And, on CD-ROM back then, there were the databases, oracles, everything was on CDs, and the CD was full. And our CD was 5 megs, because it was like, 5 megs Java. Java was tiny at the beginning, and then maybe, 50K our bytecode. And the management said, "Look, this doesn't look seriously. We cannot just ship, the entire CD, I think was 600 megs. We cannot ship, 5 megs on your CD." So I said, okay, what I can do? It's like, and it's okay, they give us PDFs or whatever, and they created some nice PDFs, high resolution PDFs, so the CD became full. So no kidding. So sometimes, you have to have a guerrilla marketing tactics to be successful. So we can cover as many questions as you like, but I'm done actually with KISS. And the next time we can focus on something different, if you like.
Sure. We got a little question from Eric about TDD. That what do you think of TDD for this present day, using this kind of context?
Yeah. Test-driven domain-driven design. Sorry, to a present day. So domain-driven design is okay. How it's called? When you see it, right? For specific use cases, domain-driven design is the way to go. And this is the killer use case. And what I noticed is everything graph related. For instance, in one project, it was transportation system. And if you imagine, it was for, imagine like cities, and cities are connected by roads, right? And they are vehicles, and they are transport units or containers, I think we call that. If you think about this, you cannot pick, a bicycle and go to highway. And you also cannot have, a huge truck going on country road, maybe. So if you think about this, what we did, the road was an abstract class, and the subclasses had different capabilities, like the max speed, capacity, and so forth. And the same was the vehicle, and the same was the transport. And if you think about this, now it comes the most important thing. So we had the state of the road. This was like, what was the max speed? This was the state, for instance. And we had the capabilities of the road. And now the cool story is we went to database and said, okay, give me all roads, of between Sao Paulo and Hamburg, right? No, impossible, but say it would be possible. Now, it was actually possible because the sea was also there, so it could be ships. So, and then you got this abstract class back, but if you called a method, let's go there, it picked the subclass, right? So if you wouldn't use object-oriented design and DDD, what would happen is you would get data transfer object, and you will have to ask the data transfer object all the time, which type are you? If you are type, of the highway, then go 200. If you type of country road, then go to 100 kilometers per hour. You know what I mean? And the entire code is no more understandable. And the other system, very similar, but complete different domain, was how signals traveled across IoT devices. And this was also domain-driven design, more or less. I mean, domain-driven design is, for me, DDD is object-oriented on the next level a little bit. So I'm assuming you are working with objects and a little bit more DSL involved, right? Domain. This is for me, because of I don't know whether it is possible or appropriate to talk about functional programming and domain-driven design. Maybe not. Usually objects are involved. In this project was the same. So the buses between IoT devices, the signal carriers, had different capabilities, different bandwidth, and with objects it was very easy. In procedural way, it was hell on earth, because we say, okay, hey, signal carrier, what type are you? Okay, if you are, the fiber channel, then we had to pick up the constants and see, okay, this is the calculation. But if you encapsulate the calculation in a Java class, it was beautiful. It was almost no code. But for CRUD applications, create, read, update, delete, DDD is pointless. I was in a project which was not only DDD, they tried to do the hexagonal architecture with DDD and pipes and adapters, not port and adapters, pipes and filters, pipe and filters. And what they did, they tried to decouple from JAX-OS, so they had their own events, which were independent from HTTP events, and there was a huge effort, and no one understood what they are doing. It was pointless. And I asked them why, and the answer was because they are independent from JAX-OS. I said, but this is crazy. Look, why I should be independent from a standard? I mean, when it changed, right? It didn't change for the last 15 years. Okay, cool. DDD. Congratulations. Thank you. Yeah, what I just say, just write stupid code and you congrat me. But if you're happy, perfect. So if you're proud of what you ship late. This is kind of true. And you should be proud that you are shipping, I would say. So if you manage to ship, be proud. This would be, I would say, this is my saying now, right? Approval testing. I think approval testing is stress testing by business department. So this was in my case, like the business department had stress tests, but I never believed in this because they had like a think time. They perform, the stress test. Okay, the user does something, then thinks about 3 seconds, and then something else happens. And with the think times, we had the problem. There was almost no parallel behavior in the system, and the problem was we couldn't, find any bugs. So the approval was important to get the green light from business, and our stress tests were like, approval tests without think time. Cool.
Cool. So I'd like to thank you, everyone. Actually, the most of the message are congratulations to Adam for this amazing content. As Vinicius said, amazing content. Thanks for sharing your knowledge and solid experience. So it's very interesting to see. When we talk about this topic, Adam, I used to listen to people in the community as they're talking about code and the complex. We need to use a design pattern and so on. That's the reason why I'm bringing this topic to you. But it's very interesting today to see that today no one tries to discuss with you about those things. But this is very interesting one. So I think I must thank you for this presentation that we could book another session to talk about another.
Yeah, exactly. For me, it is now a late night always works. So if it's boring out there in SouJava, the next time we can do AWS Cloud or testing, Max, just ping me on Discord and we can arrange, no problem at all. So Zooms works great. The next time I will find easier the chat window. This was the main problem, right? So if I then it will work. And
Yeah.
and now the clean code and everything, I would say at the end of the day, the client has to be satisfied whatever we are doing. And if the team likes the code, don't care about clean code, don't care about dogmatic stuff, you just have So maybe the last thing, I would say, if you like to build software, you will do something which is sensible. But in some projects, large projects, the developers forgot what they are doing, right? So they need some guidance from outside, and then you need clean code and agile or whatever. But if you just think about waterfall, right? Waterfall programming, it was a big 20 years ago. But if you think about this, nothing is waterfallish in the world. So we had a conversation with the Surf Pro. What was his name? The surfer from AWS? Vinicius, right? So he's a surfer, right? So a waterfall would mean Vinicius would read, 20 books about surfing, then practice, in gym like crazy, then go to the wave and win world championships. This would be waterfall process being, so it never works. What works is he tries, something and fails, and then tries again, gets better and better. So this is iterative programming, right? So, but it's not like you have to go to the surfer and explain the server that he has to be agile. It just happens if someone would like to surf, right? But if you would force someone to surf, then you have to explain agile and waterfall or whatever, because he has no interest in surfing, right? So this is I would say, if you say you have kids, Max, right? If you mix kids will start programming, they will be agile if they like. They will play, with Scratch or with Logo, and they will try and they will have fun. But if you tell to the kids, you have to program right now, it becomes a waterfall, because they get assignment, they will have to do something, it will never work, right? So I don't like to talk about the processes, agile and clean code, because mostly just discussion of the sake of discussion, right? So it's like, let's talk about theory, and because we can talk on conferences about theory. So
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah. So also let me say that Sheila also sent in the chat. It was a great session. Thanks a lot. So that's it, guys. So I don't know. I must thank you everyone for this opportunity. And I know that it's so late to Adam. Sorry about that, Adam. But we are joining a lot. We're joining a lot.
This is a midnight hacks session. Next time
Midnight
we
hacks.
announce midnight hacks with me. Always midnight hacks.
Yeah, it's a good name for the new initiative. Add initiative in your website.
Yeah, we do midnight hacks this year again, and yeah, we can do once a year a midnight hack. No problem.
Beer and bed for Adam.
Yeah. Beer and bed. Yeah, of course. Yeah, or just cut my wire that I will stop talking. Okay. See you next time.
Okay, so I will stop the record, and guys, see you soon in the next meeting. Okay, then next meetup. So let's stop it.